At this point in time, we are very pleased to have with us today the chairman of the board of the Coca-Cola Company, Mr. Muhtar Kent. Mr. Kent? You make me a believer.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome all to Atlanta. Where Coca-Cola, at Coca-Cola, we've proudly called this town home for 132 years. And just a few blocks away from here was where the first Coca-Cola was poured in May of 1886 by Dr. John Pemberton. And Coke and Atlanta have been growing together ever since. And like all of you here, Atlanta is never content, never complacent, and always striving to get better. It's also an enduring, sometimes noisy travel hub, one defined by its, of course, railway network and also its world-leading airport, all of which makes it the perfect place to gather as well as discuss the latest in your business, the hospitality business, the hotel business. So hope you all have a great stay here. Hope you enjoy some of the sights, sounds, food, and hospitality. And if you have a few moments, I'd encourage you to go and stop by at the World of Coca-Cola. This is the 30th Annual Hunter Hotel Investment Conference, which tells you something special about what Bob, as well as Lee Hunter and their teams and all of you have done to keep this gathering, this meeting, relevant and dynamic. And I appreciate very much personally to support our friends as well as neighbors at Hunter Hotels. This morning, what I'd like to do is give you a short peek into the inside of our business, as well as some of the consumer and economic and socioeconomic trends that are out there in the world right now. I personally started at the Coca-Cola Company in 1978, back 40 years ago. There's a little sign on Peachtree Road here in Atlanta, halfway between downtown and Buckhead, that actually counts the population, electronic billboard that counts the population of the city and as well as the temperature that day and at that moment. And it read 660,000 when I joined back 40 years ago, and today it reads 6.5 million. So it has had, this city has had explosive growth. As always, we at Coca-Cola still are providing moments of delicious refreshment, uplift, moments that bring people together, families, friends, neighbors, colleagues. And today, back now, 40 years later after I joined the company, in the 21st century, our brands touch the lives of people in every nation on earth, save two, which are essentially Cuba and North Korea. So we call 207 nations around the world home, and we employ proudly 770,000 people across those 207 nations, arguably and certainly without doubt the most international business based here in the United States and here in Atlanta. And so I said those two nations, and hopefully we can cut that number of two countries into one soon, as soon as our friends in Washington give us the green light to return to Cuba. We today, essentially for the first century, almost first century, we were a one brand, one product business. Today, we have almost 4,000 products and more than 500 brands. 21 of those 500 brands are $1 billion+ brands. Brands, not just, of course, our flagship brand, but brands like Coca-Cola Zero Sugar, Sprite, Fanta, Simply Orange, Powerade, Vitamin Water, Dasani, etc. Globally, we visit 27 million retailers across 207 nations every week, with a fleet of trucks that are more than UPS and FedEx trucks combined. And consumers in the world, in those 207 nations, reach out for our brands 1.9 billion times every single day. 1.9 billion, so call it 7 billion people, 1.9 billion beverages sold to 7 billion people every day. Robert Woodruff, who led our business for more than half of the 20th century, the past century, wanted Coca-Cola to be always within an arm's reach of desire. That was his philosophy. That's the idea behind the ubiquitous availability of our products. Of course, that's driven by consumer marketing, communication, but also by an amazing distribution system that, as I mentioned, visits 27 million retailers on a weekly basis. And because then, when your drinks are at an arm's reach of desire, then they're always at risk of being purchased and enjoyed. And of course, a lot of work goes into making that, in a way, simple idea a reality. Some of that work includes, as I mentioned, brand building, quality, which is the responsibility of the Coca-Cola Company, the brand owner, owner of all the brands, and then a lot of complementary work done by our 262 bottling partners that make and package and distribute and sell our beverages to those 27 million retailers. Today, we are aligning our business with a set of consumer macro trends, which I would put into two categories. Consumer macro trends into two categories. Those macro trends that are changing the expected role of companies and brands in the world. And the second macro trend is the trend that's continuing to empower consumers more than ever before. Those two macro trends. And amongst those macro trends that are impacting the role of companies and brands are, first, an aging population, an aging global population. Little bit counterintuitive to that, the rise of youth consumers. Thirdly, shifting economic centers around the world. And fourth, last but not least, certainly, resource scarcity of all kinds: water, energy, time, and so forth, capital, all kinds. Consumers, meanwhile, are more empowered than ever before, with a global middle class, sliced and diced it every way, but 800 million, maybe 750, it may be 850, but around 800 million new middle class in this decade that we're in right now, created in the world. Amazing mobile communication, giving consumers a larger share of global voice like never before. And then much more intense focus by consumers on their health, wellness, and personal needs. So if we were to list the most important consumer macro trends, in a way, one has to group urbanization as something that's really important, growing by leaps and bounds. Cities today are potent drivers of both civilization and disruption. They fuel cities, fuel new tools, they fuel new ideas, they fuel new behaviors, they fuel new business opportunities. And in a way, today's cities are like living organisms, shaped by flows of people, flows of money, flows of commerce, and their ability to meet or not meet the needs of their residents. Understanding individual cities in a way guides our marketing and guides the communication of all brand companies. It helps us to design how we advertise, how we design our supply chains, and invest in our business for the long term. Cities are really, really critical and important in the world today. And you know, we complain in the world a lot about lack of action by government. We complain that governments love to talk, but they don't like to do. There's some truth in that, but I would submit to you that subnational government, i.e. governors and mayors, they are like CEOs. They act decisively. They have to ensure that they meet the needs of their residents, and I think they're doing a fabulous job all around the world, city mayors for the most, and governors. Years ago, I used to chair the World Economic Forum's International Business Council, and one year, about 4 or 5 years ago, when I was chairing it, I said, everyone, you know, thousands and thousands of people come here to Davos every year and just talk about the issues of the world, and one of the major issues of the world is youth unemployment, and people just talk and then disappear after a week and nothing is done. So I said, why don't we just convene city mayors, take the biggest 20 cities in the world, convene the mayors, bring the mayors into a room, bring another 20, 25 civil society leaders into that room, universities, NGOs, those kind of people, and then bring another 25 CEOs into that room, and let's see whether we can get something done about youth unemployment, and then write down what the commitments are, and make sure that we follow those commitments through the year, and then we don't start from another white page from square one the following year. And that was deemed to be one of the most successful meetings ever had by the World Economic Forum, because everyone was like-minded, they action-orientated. So while we complain about government, inaction of government, I think we have to recognize that subnational leadership in the world is still healthy and very dynamic. The other key macro component and trend is that which is the acceleration of technology and I call it hyper connectivity. Technology's adoption is hurtling forward at an amazing, blistering pace. Think about how adoption curves have shortened from the TV to the VCR to the PC to the iPod, and then the latest apps. What took years takes weeks, sometimes days. 600 million tweets will be sent today, even probably some from the White House. That's up from zero just 12 and a half years ago, when that company was formed. In terms of disruptors, we have to keep an eye on the mobile web, the automation of what is termed as knowledge work, and of course the Internet of Things. Speaking of which, experts expect 1 trillion devices to be web connected by 2025, 7 years from now, touching every aspect of life, trillion devices. And then let me say a few words about the other important key macro trend, the rising millennial group, the rise of the millennials. In America, millennials 2 years ago became the largest age cohort, topping the baby boomers. Millennials, for the most part, want it now. Whatever they want it now. They want it to be seamless. They tend to be generally optimistic, tech savvy, and certainly they're early adopters. They also are, broadly speaking, aware and connected often with more in common with peers in other countries than their parents. So a millennial here in Atlanta would have more in common with a millennial in India or a millennial in China than his or her parents. As consumers also, what they want from us, from businesses, is to have a positive impact in the world. As employees, they expect their companies to have a purpose, clearly, and almost half connect this purpose to, little more than half, actually, connect that purpose that they seek to improving society or the world, the planet, helping the planet. And so, to engage with millennials effectively, businesses and brands must be responsive and must be authentic. Many of today's consumers, led by millennials, don't want to hear anymore a brand monologue. They don't want to be talked to. They don't want to be communicated to. They actually want to engage with brands via a dialogue. In the old days, what used to happen is you'd make a good product, you'd have a good distribution system, you'd have good communication with your consumers, and your purpose was to create positive consumer impressions. Through that, your product was available, positive consumer impressions, connected at the point of retail, and the purchase would be done. And the job would be accomplished. Today, the job of brand owners is to create positive consumer expressions. That means consumers have to talk positively about the brands between themselves. Clearly a different task and clearly a different set of circumstances. And then we're also seeing a growing important growing link between brand love and business respect. And at Coca-Cola, we've always tried to make a lasting positive difference in the world. And we know we can't have a thriving, growing business unless we're serving thriving and growing communities effectively that host us. So during the last decade, in my time as CEO, we religiously focused on building long-term value creation for not just our share owners, but a host of stakeholders: our employees, our consumers, our customers, our bottling partners, NGO partners, civil society organizations, even governments that host us across those 207 nations. And as we work to create more value and give back sufficiently to every community that we serve, the 3 W's of water, well-being, and women served us as beacons and guide posts. Women, after all, are often pillars of our communities, and they make a disproportionate share of household purchases. In our case, about 55–60% of purchase decisions are made by women for our brands. So not only did we set out to create a much more even playing field for women inside our company, and our numbers rose from the teens for senior executives to 40% now Numbers rose more than doubled for our board membership and so forth. But we also set out to empower 5 million women entrepreneurs in this decade around the world. And it is by far the largest program of its kind undertaken by a commercial enterprise in the world. 5 million women entrepreneurs audited externally. We have 2 years to complete our goal. It ends in 2020, and we will reach that number of 5 million. The way we do it is we have an NGO partner in every country where we operate. They identify the women entrepreneurs. We have 2 facilities from the IFC of microcredit of $100 million each. And then we train with the NGO partner the women in basic supply chain work, distribution, retailing, basic accounting, hygiene, a host of things. And then once they're trained, we link them to microcredit, and then they become distributors, retailers, etc. around the world. The program is called 5 by 20, and UN Women is also our partner in this effort, and we're very proud of that program. Water, again, we put a goal out in 2010 to become water neutral by 2020. We are one of the largest commercial users of water in the world. When we put out that goal, we were using about 250 billion, quarter of a trillion liters of water for our beverages, to make our beverages and the content of our beverages. Today, that number is close to half a trillion because our business has grown. And we achieved water neutrality by 2015, 5 years ahead of the goal. So we give back now every liter that we take from the planet. And again, this is really important to make sure that we set an example. Because what we use, half a trillion liters, is 6 months of the use of water needs of Mexico City, to put things into perspective. But the important thing is that what we're doing is creating more respect for one of the most important resources on our planet. When we become water neutral, people then think twice about making sure that they can improve their respect for that scarce resource. And also many others have followed us. As for the third W, our business contributes to well-being of families, communities in many, many, many ways, from helping medicine reach remote villages. We have a program with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and governments of Tanzania and many other African countries, 12 African countries, to lend our distribution system and expertise to take medicine to the last mile in villages in Africa. And we have been able to improve the availability of medicine in key 12 African countries by up to 45% with this program, just to give you one example, or installing clean water kiosks in underserved communities across Africa and so forth. We're also committed to being part of the solution to the very real global challenge of obesity, with more no or low-calorie beverages, greater availability of smaller packs, intensifying innovation in new sweeteners and delicious beverages that have less added sugar every single day. More of those are being put out into the market now. About 40% of the 4,000 products we have are low or no sugar. In marketing today, we're seeing a shift also from mass marketing to mass personalization. Share a Coke, which replaces our brand name with the names of individuals across the world, is a great example of this. But what we're seeing is consumers across the world, in every industry, are demanding a shift from mass marketing to mass personalization. Another one is the Coca-Cola Freestyle, the futuristic fountain that offers 130 beverages as opposed to the 6 in the legacy system, where consumers create their own personal mixes and share them also with the Freestyle app. So And that innovation, Freestyle, was developed through the medical microdosing technology for home dialysis machines that enabled us to dispense 130 different beverages in a single machine versus the legacy 6. So using technology to offer so many different choices, so many different shareable mixes, helps certainly us create more personal and more interactive connections to consumers. And as you can see, a related trend in all the brand extensions and different flavor variants popping up through the grocery store every single day. Back 40 years ago, when I joined the Coca-Cola Company, we in the Coca-Cola Company would never seen a fruit tree. Today, with our partners around the world, we have 27 million fruit trees under plantation. We are the largest global supplier and producer of juices in the world, fresh juices in the world. And just to give you an idea what 27 million planted trees look like is about the size of Belgium, if you add it all up. And this is citrus plantations in South Florida, citrus plantations in Brazil, pomegranate plantations in China, stone fruit plantations, stone fruit being peach, apricot, cherry, wild cherry, and plum plantations in North Africa and Turkey and Southeast Europe, and on and on and on. Mango plantations across many of these mango farmers we have around the world, hundreds and thousands of mango farmers in India, in Uganda, in other parts of Africa, as well as parts of Southeast Asia, are women mango farmers. Haiti, after the earthquake, we went and planted 6 million mango trees in Haiti after the earthquake, and 80% of the groves are owned by women farmers. So that's how this business of ours has transformed. And today, if you ask me, I am extremely excited about the future of our business. I'm excited because I want to share a fact with you. In the world, there's 7 billion people that live on the planet, but they live in 2.2 million households across 210 nations. Every single household in the world consumes about 26 drinks per day. Those drinks are every kind: alcoholic, non-alcoholic, hot, cold, coffees, homemade, juices, our beverages, sparkling, non-sparkling, every kind, 26. Of those 26, only 2 are ours on a daily basis. So the room for growth is immense when you think about it. That's why we see limitless opportunities on the horizon. And I know during the course of this conference, you'll be hearing from many industry experts. But at a significant risk to my own credibility, let this lifetime Coca-Cola salesman, myself, humbly offer a couple of comments about how your business, in a way, interacts with ours. So food and beverages in U.S. hotels right now offers profit margins of around 20%, which makes this a very potent area for revenue growth as well as profit growth. Today, leisure and business travelers still account for about 37% of food service in lodging, but we're seeing more hotel dining by local people also. In fact, local traffic now represents about 21% of hotel dining, up about 16% from 4 years ago. So in your industry, we obviously work with customers to increase the beverage availability in all aspects of lodging: restaurants, retail, pool, in-room dining, bar outlets, banquets, catering, etc. And we want to make sure that we have the right type of beverages for the right occasions, the right brands, the right packages in place to help unlock greater value for owners, for hotel owners. As for the world economy, Bob mentioned in his opening remarks about the United States economy. We're seeing generally a broad-based upturn at the sake of being over-optimistic, but I think it's realistically we can say that there's a broad-based upturn. Not as strong as we would like, but there is. With global growth, world global growth hitting 3% last year, the strongest rate of growth since 2011. And global growth is expected to edge up slightly higher this year at 3.1%, with growth in emerging and developing economies strengthening to 4.5%. And that's, again, the strongest number since 2010. Again, on a global basis, financing conditions were benign last year. They're likely to tighten slightly, not too much, but slightly in this year, 2018, as monetary policy begins to normalize. I think it's good for the world in general not to have free money, because that also spoils many parts of the algebra equation to have free money. We've never had this long a period of interest rates being this low since the Second World War. 2018 again, China's slowdown is going to continue to weigh on the global economy, for sure, but it's going to be counterbalanced by better conditions, better numbers for GDP growth and disposable income growth in both Russia as well as Brazil and some parts of Europe as well as Africa. As for the United States, we remain very bullish. For years, I've always said publicly that the United States is my favorite emerging market. And the fundamentals remain strong in the United States market. Tax reform is making investing in America even more attractive for all of us, putting more money in the hands of consumers, i.e. disposable income, and helping spur economic growth. So what we think we'll see is quarter by quarter the US economy actually even getting better. Similar thing, it was actually quite similar quarter by quarter 3 years ago when the price of fuel came down. It took a good 3-4 quarters. It fueled economic activity, increased economic activity, particularly in the consumer goods business for 3-4 quarters in a row. All this brings me back to all of you. When all of you here get up in the morning, I hope you think about all the great things that you're all doing. People need to travel. They need to do business. They need to go see doctors, go to hospitals. They need to go to distant places, visit relatives, visit friends, and take time to relax. Go on business trips, take time to relax as well. And each of you, in your own way, helps people do these things and do them well. You help them. Every night, you help put a clean, safe, affordable roof over the heads of millions and millions of people, each with his or her own story and reason for traveling. That's something very noble and very worthwhile, and something I hope that none of you lose sight of, how noble it is, how important it is, and what an important place in society that has. The people of this country need hospitality, and they need your hospitality. And that should make you all feel good, better, proud. Maybe not every single minute of the day, but definitely most of the time. And when the work day is done and you pause for a moment and you reflect, maybe with an ice-cold Coca-Cola or a smart water, I hope you'll think about all the moms and all the dads and all the families, all the seniors able to relax, able to recharge their batteries and get a good night's rest and sleep because of all the great things that you are all doing. So from that perspective, I want to thank you all for what your contribution is to making life better in the United States of America. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you, Bob and Lee, for inviting me, and God bless and have a great conference. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.